don't know who would be that. Oh, you're going to do it, are you, Sarah?
Great, thanks.
Sarah, come round.
First a question for the regents and then one for officers. Thank you, David. David, just interested to know how the companion card is going.
Up until the end of December, 38 uses of the companion card, which is greater than what it was 12 months ago. So it's getting a greater use. And it's been used for a variety of events. I mean, for Crowded House, tickets were $200 odd, so, and someone wanted to go, so the companion
Great.
paid for that. And yeah, right down to the ballet, local ballet schools where the ticket price is $5.
Yeah.
So it's a variety of prices and events.
No, that's fantastic. Just looking at the statement of intent, the numbers in there suggest that it was 70 some uses in the last 12-month period. Does that sound reasonably consistent?
That sounds about right.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I'm trying to understand then, because the outlook then is quite a lot lower than that. So the measure that's proposed for the coming year would only be 30, and then it would go to 60, 70, etc. So just trying to understand why kind of those numbers are so much below the actuals that we're already achieving, and presumably we're aspiring to achieve more.
Yeah, well, the statement of intent wasn't changed because it was a 3-year statement, and we've just predicted the numbers sort of 3 years ago as to what they would be. That's why we haven't altered the figures.
And was that because you didn't have the opportunity to alter anything, or like I'm just trying to understand what's your forward view around the use of the companion card, and what could we expect over the next few years?
Well, it's like any figures. It's the unknown, isn't it? It's we haven't really taken, I suppose, a lot of time or effort to saying on the companion card, we know it's on the increase, and we just do a percentage increase each year on it, if that makes sense. No,
Thank you. That's a helpful response there. Now turning hopefully to officers at some point. That's all right. We'll give you a moment, Sarah. Thanks. Just with reference to recommendation 3, we're being asked to agree the recommended comments in table 3. Almost, I'll give you a second to find it there. Thanks. So almost entirely in that table, the comment is literally no comment. So I'm just trying to understand what message we're trying to get back to the regent through that.
The only recommendation, Sarah Claridge, Governance Advisor. The only recommendation we had was that we work with the regent to look at their performance indicators and to reevaluate them.
Thanks. Yeah, so I'm trying to understand in all the other cases where we've said no comment, is that no comment because we're happy,
Yes.
unhappy? Why have we not had something that's more clear about our view on things?
No comment because we're content with what the region have supplied in their draft statement of intent in terms of matching the council's expectation. So
Right.
There's nothing else to add or to work on.
Thank you. Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Finlay.
I think I might have asked this before, but never mind.
Sorry, Councillor Finlay, can you just make sure you're speaking into your microphone, please?
Yes,
Thank you.
just looking at your accounts, your employee cost, I see they're gone up to 44,000. It's $11,000 more than last year. Can you tell me why?
We've employed a refreshments officer, I suppose you can say, someone who's now controlling all the purchases of the goods, the change of products that we're putting in there. And this person also covers leave for their administrator and our finance officer who had 2 months off last year to go over, in October, to go overseas. Also covers all the ticketing. So She's a jack of all trades, really. Yeah.
So it's good, it's not just because someone's not taking their holidays.
Absolutely not. A lot of
And
them are in their negatives.
Just a figure that caught my eye is your goods and services tax, $31,000, whereas only 17 last year. Is there any reason for such a huge?
Because we've taken over the bar.
The bar?
Yeah.
Okay. Right, thank you. That's all, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Harpeter. Oh. Sorry, my button pressing isn't working. There you go.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Thank you. Just one question following up from what the Mayor asked you, just around the seismic strengthening on 2.5. In anticipation that the work will need to be done, have you thought about where you could go to for a period of time to do shows in anticipation for next year?
No, we haven't.
Have you given some thought to that though? Because potentially you will need to go somewhere else for a period of time.
Possibly. I think when the reports was done, 7 years ago, I mean, hopefully we could carry on trading. And some of the work may be able to be carried out during January, February, which is our quiet months. January we had one event, and February we had one event. So during our quiet months, it won't affect us quite as much. So it's the programming of what needs to be done. If it's tender that needs to be strengthened with scaffolding and that, we can still trade. But if we get closed down, well, that's a different kettle of fish.
Okay. Thank you. Thanks for the answer. Thanks, Madam Chair.
Thanks for the question. The General Manager would like to make a comment on that. Yeah, you should be. Do you want mine?
Yeah, thanks, Chris Tyberg, General Manager Infrastructure. Just on that, so just to remind everyone what's in plans. So we've got design work coming up in the next financial year. So what the team is going to do is to try and through that come up with a sort of a methodology that's as least disruptive as possible. But as per the conversation, until that design work's done and we can work out what's possible, it's sort of, we just don't really know. So we can't really give any guidance about whether it would, the extent to which it might interrupt operations.
But potentially we wouldn't want public going in and out of a facility that's got work being done to it. I mean, what he asked a question about it going in and out of a facility.
No, Councillor Harper's raising a really good point about public access, which we'll manage as part of the process. I suggest we take that offline for discussion later. Councillor Dennison.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just in regards to when it's in the section around working with our friends, and it's got that you've installed extra satellite bars around to an FPOS machine so you can speed up the service. I really wanted to just push down on the Encore bar space that we expanded for the region a few years ago, and just understanding how well used that space is when you're doing these other satellite bars, and whether or not there's opportunity to do that without the Encore space.
That's, yeah, good question. Previously, when the friends were running the bars, they could not tell me what bars sold what, or who was busy and who wasn't busy. We just, there's always queues at bars, so it was very hard to judge. We've now incorporated a system where everything now is technology. We can see exactly what's being sold, when it's being sold instantly. So we can report now on each bar area, and I haven't got those figures with me, but we're finding that bar is working better now because we've done some work there. We've spent $17,000 on straightening up that bar where it was on a diagonal to create more room. We've also used the Disney system at times, which is the rope system, so people on really busy nights can pick up their own ice cream, go to the bar, they'll serve next and then exit. So we're trying to improve the system right through, by the end of the financial year, we'll be able to tell you which bars are successful, how many times they've been operating, and what they've sold.
For maybe a question I'd like to get some response back is around, that has a commercial value. Is there enough activity for your bar activities for the amount of nights you use it and the turnover to justify having that commercial space for the balance of activity that you require?
Well, I'd like to say absolutely,
Okay.
but I can't give you figures.
That figure of turnover, would it be possible to get some information or knowledge of what that's been in the last 6 months?
About $109,000 we've turned over.
Out of that encore space, or was that
No,
total?
that's total at this stage. So I'll need to have that broken down, but I can get to those figures.
I'd be interested. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. That has exhausted the questions. Thank you both for coming in and speaking to your report and your draft statement of intent today. Thank you, Sarah, for popping up with that. The recommendations in front of us are that we receive that 6-month performance report, receive the draft statement of intent, and agree with that recommended comment on the draft statement of intent outlined in Table 3, be advised to the Regent Theatre Trust Board. And I will open for any comment or debate on those recommendations, starting with the Mayor.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Again, thanks to the Davids, plural, around the work that you do for us as a city and managing and governing the Regent Theatre. Just imagine if we, some of the questions around the theatre being closed, imagine if it was closed. It would actually be quite a big hole in our facilities. We would be hosting people, we would be able to put people. So it's pretty valuable to us as a city. So thank you again, and please pass on our thanks to not only the staff, but especially the friends of the Regent. And I just want to focus on them for a little bit. You would have seen in the report that they've, through the money that they earn, they put that back into the theatre. So there's another 30 grand that's going into facilities and lighting improvements there. But look, just recently we've had the New Zealand Symphony Orchestra, we had the New Zealand Air Force Band, and it has become a little bit tougher to find the crowds. I mean, they played to reasonable numbers, but in a few years ago they probably would have played to almost full houses. So it is tough out there. I mean, there is less money being generated, but I'd just say to the Regent, please use all the avenues in terms of promotion and the marketing. We have a great comms team here. See a little more cross-pollination of some of those, what I call more blue chip or top line events at the Regent. And I'd say to the officers, when they're considering what they're going to be doing with the earthquake strengthening, bearing in mind I'm understood that it's a small strengthening rather than a big, large project, that, the theatre at night, hopefully it can be used. During the day, there might be some disruption, but we'd have to have some sort of plan B, I think, if the theatre was to be closed for any significant period of time, because we've got to put graduations, community use, professional performing arts that come to the area. So again, thanks to the Regent. It's a good news story and something that we should really be celebrating. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Barrett.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a brief comment around the no comment. And I would hope that in future we have a little bit more information that we could share back in writing. The CCOs go to some length to provide us with detailed outlooks of where they're intending to go in the future, and I think we could be a little bit more clear with our communication back to them, as well as for the wider community to actually understand where we're at on a council, rather than leaving it to no comment and assuming that we know what that means. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Dennison.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to highlight that one of the best years in 11 or whatever, is quite a lot of activity being generated out of the region, and it's actually seen through the vibrancy of Broadway, particularly at night, with just the cars parked, people on the streets, the dining opportunities, a real entertainment and hospitality focus, and it does Broadway and the city well. And I just really wanted to give some recognition to that because it's very evident in how well the inner city does in the evenings particularly, and credit to those putting all the efforts behind the scenes. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Harpiter.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Also want to say, yes, we all love the Regent and we love what it does for our city. It's fantastic. But having been through a seismic strengthening project of some size and knowing the pluses and minuses that you have to go through and the hoops that you have to go through, you have to put people first and the safety of people first, and you have to make sure that people aren't on the site when you do it, if it is. So I just have an issue with doing a project when people are on site. So that's all I was questioning, with that was put the people first. But to understand that, we've got to keep it running and we've got to keep it going, but we've just got to make sure we can try and do it. And David sort of brought that up himself. If we can try and do it in January and February, then that'd be amazing if it's a small project. So, yep, understand that the officers have got that in hand and that'd be amazing, but that's all I was trying to bring up, was just the safety of the people first. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor. I think that was understood by officers. Councillor Findlay.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was at a function at the Regent last month and it was jam-packed. It was hopping, I tell you, it was humming. And we were sitting next to a couple from Wanganui. And they said, how come you've got the Regent? Wish we had something like that in Wanganui. And I said, you must have some sort of thing. Oh, nothing like this. This is spectacular. You know, we are really blessed to have the Regent in our city. You know, and I think we should do our very best to celebrate it, to publicise it, and support the staff that are running it, because it brings a lot of things into the city that are not available elsewhere. Look at the schools that use it. It's phenomenal the amount of schools that use it for their prize giving now. It is a centre, it is a gem in our city, and we should value it to the max.
Thank you, Councillor. No further comments. So just in reply to the comments, thank you all for your consideration of the reports in front of us. Thank you again to the Regent and the Friends of the Regent and the board and the staff and all the people who make it the asset to the city that it is. I was particularly noting in your report, it's been mentioned the money provided by the Friends, but also $100,000 in external funding from Central Energy Trust, which is $100,000 that we bring into a council asset because it's structured as a CCO. Without that structure, we wouldn't be able to access that funding. That is the value to us of the structure that we have in place and the process that we go through with the Regent. So it is worthwhile to us, and I'd encourage you to continue with that active fundraising approach that you take. Be interested to receive that bar feedback. I'm also interested, and Councillor Dennison has talked about this for many years, so it's no surprise to those around the table, but I think there is a real strong offering from the Regent to activate that space, which is at the front of the theatre. So at the moment, there is the, we are all familiar with the space, there's the bookings bit, which is a street-facing thing, and then there's the bar. And most of the time, most of days and nights, those spaces can look quite dead. And I think that is a challenge I'd like to put to the Regent, to think about how you bring some visible life to that street frontage through how you use those spaces. But that is a very minor challenge in the excellent report that you're sending to us today. So thank you for the work that you've done. Thank you, colleagues, for your support ongoing for the Regent. I'd ask you to vote on those 3 recommendations, please. Carried unanimously. Thank you. Thank you, the Regent. We can release you back into the wild now. So back to our agenda as published, we'll now move to the Kitui Horizons Region Spaces and Places Plan for Sport and Recreation Implementation and Facility Planning Update, which is presented by Anne-Marie Morey, a Policy Analyst, and Carl Johnston, General Manager, Partnerships, Environments, Sport Manawatu. I hope I got that right in the end, Carl. But over to you two for your report, please.
Kia ora koutou. Anne-Marie Murray, Policy Analyst in the Strategic Planning Group. Been told to keep this brief, sorry, and to my right is Madam Chair had already introduced as Carl Johnston from Sport Manawatu. Carl is probably the lead in this area, so hopefully he'll be able to answer any questions, may not be able to. So it's really just an information report to update you since he tour the Horizons Region Spaces and Places Plan for Sport and Recreation back in June last year. So it's really just to bring back the information for your interest, to see how that's been tracking with the other councils in the region, and also to just give an update of the proponent-led or the community-led proposals that are sort of progressing through the planning process through either the Hauraki Tour Plan or the previous Regional Sports Facility Plan. I'll hand it over to Carl. He might want to talk about what we've been up to since the plan was endorsed, or they've been up to.
Thank you, Anne-Marie. Yes, so just as stated in the report, we have all 7 councils within the Horizons endorsed this plan now, so that's been a big challenge in the previous iteration of this, so a massive success from our point of view, and Sport New Zealand are very impressed by getting that across the line as well. So more recently, we as a collective, each of the councils have nominated staff officers, and we recently had a steering group catch up last week, so that's just to establish some terms of reference and some MOU across councils, how this is going to work moving forward, and how the sharing of knowledge is going to happen throughout the regions. So yeah, I'll keep it short for you, Rachel, but any questions, happy to answer.
Thank you both. Just one question from me. In next steps, you talk about setting up the steering group and identifying proposals across the region. Just what kind of reporting back on progress in this space would we expect, or does this just move into the operational realm now?
Normally that would be captured through Sport Manawatu's reports to council. I think that's the way we've done it previously. Excellent, thank you. Councillor Zabellin.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Kia ora koutou. Also on the steering group, why a steering group? What are we going to achieve through the steering group that we aren't already directing through the long-term plan programs?
So this is just to give a regional perspective. The conversations and stuff that I had through officers between like Tararua District Council, if someone's having issues with the pools or an aquatics facility, then if there's a specialist area within the PNCC, they've recently gone through a sun protection report, for example. Those are kind of the collaboration in that steering group, which are generally parks and facility officer maintenance people, and it also gives a higher level of any regional facilities that are coming through. So the canoe polo, we're including other councils just so that they're not going down the avenue of investigating building a canoe polo court or for something as an example for that.
So it's more about collaboration and support than about actually steering any particular programs?
Correct, but also giving us a high level view as well as an experience or what's the word? I'm just trying to think. Giving a collaboration so that they have an experience, like it's not just been directed by one person, gives a broader, high level view, I suppose.
Thank you. Do you think, so we heard today and we've heard a few times about the lack of other council players, if you like, in the regional space and how Pami is sort of punching above its weight. Do we think this kind of steering group could help to bring other councils more into the fold and encourage more investment in the regional situation?
Yeah, so to follow on from, there's currently, as we speak, Sport New Zealand are hosting a National Spaces and Places online forum, or HUI, would be a part of it, but here. But yesterday there was a discussion about a regional levy for space or for facilities. Sport Northland have introduced that a little while ago, so that could be something that we introduce through the Horizons region. And yeah, that'll be something that we'll explore across all of the councils.
So like a levy applied to the usage of facilities?
It's a regional rate, so it would ask that there's a targeted rate to support investment into regional sports facilities.
Through Horizons?
It probably, in our region, it would probably be through regional council. I think some councils have struck a regional or targeted rate for facility investment. A few years ago, the regional council did put that up through their long-term plan, but it was unsuccessful.
Cool, thank you. And I just also had some questions about the proponent-led programs and to what extent they are proponent-led, because I was looking at the sort of 50-metre pool feasibility study and the canoe polo facility, and from my read of the report, the needs assessment and the pre-feasibility study have been funded by us and by Sport New Zealand, and although we've had submissions come, those were also identified in the aquatics needs assessment as, you know, and in Hirakitua as well as developments that we would think to prioritise. So I was wondering to what extent those are actually proponent-led as opposed to council-led.
That's a good question. I suppose they're proponent-led from the perspective that we're not necessarily generating the idea from the council. Some of those, I suppose the larger facilities that have huge like price tags associated with them, like indoor courts or swimming pools, I think it would be unrealistic for a proponent group to, put their hand up to say that, we're going to, sort of go for one of those. So there is a blend, and that's what I've tried to demonstrate in the report, the connection between council-led sports facility planning and how the proponent-led the proposals that we have from the community kind of intersect with those. Often the proponent group is not in a financial position. We've heard a little bit about that this morning, to fund or may only be in the position to partly fund some of the research or needs assessment work. And certainly in the case of Manawatu Kiwi Canoe Polo Club, they did offer to help with the cost of that needs assessment, and just with recent discussions with them, they probably would be looking to get external funding or put in their own funding for further feasibility work. So yeah, there's a bit of a blend going on there. So you could argue that some of these proposals become more aligned with, well, they become aligned with council sports facility planning because of the own work that we are doing.
So maybe in terms of the led terminology, it's more collaborative than led by, or is it more that we're taking turns to lead at different stages of the process?
Yeah, I think the canoe polo initially came to council or Sport 102 to lead that piece of work out. We are the delivery arm essentially, but I'd still consider it proponent led. They're going to be the main beneficiary out of it at the end of the day.
Thank you. And just one more, which was, what's a pre-feasibility study and why are we doing a pre-feasibility study? It's not one of the 3 steps they've outlined.
Yes, we often get tripped up with naming things differently, but pre-feasibility is, I suppose, what is referred to in the Hirakitua documentation as a needs assessment or an assessment of demand. So, yeah, I suppose there's no clear-cut line sometimes about whether, what they capture in their scope. So, like some of the needs assessment work could stray into aspects of feasibility or aspects of business case. Sometimes they're done, like the case of the gym sports work that they commissioned was a needs assessment once a need had been established moving into feasibility. So there's no one size fits all really, but yeah, pre-feasibility is just another way of describing a needs or demand assessment.
Cool. Okay, so I do have one more from that. Sorry, which is on that point. If we're having, I was just querying about the need for a further needs assessment if we've had Hieraki Tour, which has established a need for canoe polo, say, and then we've had an aquatic facilities needs assessment, which did identify canoe polo, for example, as a need, and it rated that as an 8 or higher, so it was sort of demonstrated as a need. So we've had two documents that have already established a need, and then we're doing a needs assessment and pre-feasibility study to like, you know what I mean? I'm wondering how far do we need to establish the need at all these different levels? Are we overcomplicating the identification of need?
I think Hauraki Toa established need at a regional scale. The previous regional sports facility plan was very heavy on supply, like what we had. It was a huge big stock take, essentially. Some needs work. So yes, Hauraki Toa does establish needs, but I suppose in terms of detailed and more specific needs for specific things, that's where the independent assessment, I suppose, comes in, and really teases that out. Looks at a whole lot of things around the health of that sport, trends in terms of code growth or a whole lot of things, demographics, how it does align to things like the regional planning context. So yeah, Hauraki Toa is more of a plan, so it has a vision across the region to make sure that we're planning for facilities in a collaborative way. It has a base set of principles that are used each time we get a package of work done, like a needs assessment or feasibility. It is tested against those principles of that plan to ensure that the stakeholders have an awareness of areas that they might need to strengthen in their proposals, and we, Sport 102 and council staff, do an assessment after each package of work is done, and against those criteria to help decide whether or not there is enough merit in that proposal for it to proceed into a more detailed analysis, like a feasibility study or a business case.
And so the aquatics facility needs assessment was more because we commissioned that, didn't we, for Palmerston North?
Yes.
And so, and having a read of that, I think that did tease out quite a lot of those more specific issues. So what is the benefit of conducting an additional needs assessment for a specific project? Is that just something that we're required to do, to hone in on?
I think it's that honing in on, it's, facility specific. So yeah, I suppose a need can be established at quite a high level need. The needs assessment where it looks more in detail at that specific need.
Okay, thank you, that's all. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Harpeter.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Just a couple of questions from me. I feel like we've seen these before, and just wanting to know how we can get them going further. So my question's around in another region, are they successful in this format to make them go any further? So can we see them in another region, like say the Hawke's Bay? How does the Hawke's Bay make them work? And so that's my question, my first question.
I'm not sure what you're asking in terms of making it work. Are you talking about the process or the speed of...
Not the speed, I'm talking about how do we actually get these from the paper and then get them actually to get it from the paper and to get them actually out into the community, because I feel like we've seen these for 5 years, some of these projects, and they haven't gone anywhere. So I'm just asking, how do we actually get them off the paper and going?
Well, a lot of that is down to funding decisions and decisions that are made around this table through LTPs, and I suppose the first two projects on that table have received council contribution.
So my second question is, how does Hawke's Bay do it? What's the formula that makes it successful in Hawke's Bay?
I'm not able to answer that question. I'm not quite sure. Are you asking about the speed in which we take that we reach a construction decision.
It's not about speed.
Can I just interject here to say, I don't think Anne-Marie can answer this one for Palmerston North. Maybe that's a conversation through the Mayor's office that we can have with Hawke's Bay to understand their process.
Can I just ask another
Sure.
question then? Can we look at private partnerships, PPPs? Is that ever coming into this model? Because we're not going to get it just doing funding, because we're not going to talk to other councils because they're not going to give us any other money. Is there any other way can we do it through PPPs?
Well, the feasibility stage of a proposal looks at a funding plan. So all of those opportunities are looked at that point. In fact, they're probably looked at quite early on in the process to try and identify funding sources. I suppose, like, once a proposal has been found to be feasible, then that's when I suppose the rubber hits the road in terms of being able to access that funding. So some of that funding can be sourced from council. Sometimes it's referred to as seed funding that then enables those groups to apply to external funding sources or receive sponsorship. But yeah, I mean, there's also, I suppose, a benefit in some projects being taken through the process by council. So council has made its own decision to, to fund facilities. Sometimes those facilities have required external funding, and those external funders like to see the evidence of need and the benefits that it's going to be a feasible proposition from, not only raising capital but ongoing operating. So, those things are all looked at.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Finlay.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just noticed that most of the sports you've got here, the assessments have started, but netball stands out because there's no start to any of the assessments. And in reading it, is that only because there's no budget allocated?
It's not only because of that. It's certainly something that we have on our radar as something that needs probably to be pushed along with those proponent groups, the regional sports representing that who put the initial proposal through an LTP some years ago.
Yeah, I can remember some years ago, and it's some years ago now, that they came to us. So it's one of the longest standing needs, but nothing's been done.
I think this suffers from the page break, Councillor. There's an indication on page 37 that the first two columns are green, and then it goes over the page and it looks like there's nothing happening, but there is some more information there. Right. Councillor Wood, pressing the wrong button.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just on page 37 on that chart that we're discussing, what does FCO mean? I'm sure there's a simple answer, but I can't remember.
Oh, sorry, Councillor Wood, that stands for Facility Concept Outline. So that's the first or the initial expression of the idea that the group is seeking.
So it's a 4-stage process with the facility concept outline as the first step?
Yes, that's right.
Okay. So I appreciate today's not the day for councillors to question or change the process, but in terms of understanding what point we review this, I recall maybe it was a year ago we approved this, a year and a half, something like that. Given there seems to be a lot of pressure, certainly at central government, to develop processes that skip some of these multi-layered, 4-step things, at what point would it be appropriate for council to review the FCO needs assessment, feasibility study, business case, then development process that we currently have in place?
I suppose we're always looking at ways to try and, I suppose, make sure that these types of processes are not seen as impediments to getting things done. They're done for good reason, and often it is fit for purpose. So, as I explained last time, sometimes it's not distinct 4 stages. Sometimes there is an amalgamation of things, depending on, I suppose the value of facility. And we've got a range here from, several $1 million. There's a huge amount of investment. If you added all of these facilities up, that's a lot of investment into facilities. So I suppose we're just trying to make sure that we're doing our due diligence, essentially, and yes, certainly there have been criticisms of the last regional sports facility process. I think we're all aware of those. Often the pace at which we can move a facility along is very much dependent on the proponent group and their resources. Many of them are volunteers, and what they can access in terms of budgets to further work along. This requires consultant input, this type of work. So yeah, there is a cost involved. We're looking at ways potentially that we could, reduce those costs, but it has to be done independently. Otherwise, you're going to end up in the situation where the proponent group, I suppose, has a piece of work that. Yeah, don't understand.
I did understand that, thank you.
Yeah, so sorry.
You've sort of answered my next question, which was, so each of these 3 stages is done through independent consultancy, none of it's done in-house with the City Council?
The first stage is done through a combination of Sport 102 and staff and the proponent group working together, just to make sure that we've captured all of the relevant information. As I mentioned before, some of the work in, good spotting, I suppose, with the outdoor covered courts aspect was covered in the work that we did around indoor courts. So council, I suppose, took that part of it to try and advance that along as part of that piece of research. But it's, some proponent groups walk away because they realise that there's, huge costs involved and huge amount of time involved. That would be fair to say of Manawatu Gym Sports. They have a feasibility study. They've realised that the building that they aspire to is going to cost several $1 million. They're not quite sure whether they can do that, so they are looking at other opportunities that were presented in that feasibility study for them. So yeah, there's always an element of how the readiness of those groups to pursue stuff and the partners, I suppose, that are working in the space to have the capacity or the resources to push things forward. Often these things are levels of service increases. Some of them are, brand new facilities. So yeah, there's a bit of a mixture.
Fair enough, that makes sense. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you both. That is the end of questions. So I'll move the recommendation that we receive the memorandum titled Hiraki Tua Horizons Region Spaces and Places Plan for Sport and Recreation Implementation Facility Planning Update, Culture and Sport on 26th of March, seconded by Councillor Meehan. Open that for any comments. I'll just start by saying I feel for the officers in this one. It feels like we continually look at the process and go, surely we can make this more straightforward. There must be an easier way of getting all the money. And I think experience shows that there is no easy way of getting all the money. And if we don't do our due diligence, if we don't work collaboratively across the region, we actually put barriers in the way of accessing funding for this kind of event. And we certainly know that council can't fund all of this. So without partners, none of it happens. Having good process in place seems to me to be the best way to be able to advance the aspirations of our community. I am continually excited by the prospect of a regional levy. We tried with this with Horizons a few years ago and failed at the community consultation part. I will be interested to see that conversation brought back round again. For me, and I think the conversation we've had even earlier today about our wider facilities in the region means this isn't just about sport and recreation spaces and places. This is about the regional facilities that Palmerston North offers to the wider region, and I'd be very interested to hear how that conversation goes with our regional colleagues. Those are my comments. Councillor Zabellin, you have a comment?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, I'm also very interested in the targeted rate, but I am concerned that we are doing just a heck of a lot of paperwork to establish a need that's already been well established. But a broader observation is that by undertaking so many levels of assessment and studies and business cases and collaborations, and in building those relationships with those codes on these shared proposals, that we do set up expectation. And I think this was really clear in the long-term plan when I put up some recommendations not to proceed with some investments from operational funds in other organisations' facilities. And the key pushback from the room was that we'd established a relationship and we'd established an expectation, and to back out now would be a really bad faith move because we'd got this far in the process. And so in looking at this, we'd had a Manawatu Wanganui sports facilities plan, we've had a Hirakitua as a regional plan, then we've had a Palmerston North specific review within that, an aquatics needs assessment, a specific canoe polo facility draft needs assessment, a pre-feasibility study, a final needs assessment, I assume, a actual feasibility study, business cases likely to be indicative and then detailed. So I can just see where it comes to next, that we've sunk a lot of money and years of time and collaboration into these explorations, and then the appetite to not proceed will likely be the same. I think it's an unintended consequence of having so many layers of assessments and studies and paperwork. It may well predetermine us, if not in financial terms, then in a sense of responsibility for the expectations raised and the funds already spent. And I think a key beneficiary of this appears to be RSL, the consultants who we contract to do these studies, who've told us 3 times now that we need a canoe polo facility. So I think it is an unintended consequence of having this many layers that it does commit us at least in a sense of responsibility when it comes to it. Thank you.
Very well said, Councillor. Councillor Harpeter. Oops.
Thanks, Madam Chair. I wasn't going to speak, and then Councillor Zabellin prompted me to. I just want to say I do really thank the officers for all the hard work they have done over the last few years on this work, but I am as frustrated as you could tell by my questioning of the lack of speed on getting this to where we will need to get it to. So that's where I'm coming with my frustrations. It's more about just wanting to get on and get some of these deliverables delivered. So I know we have to jump through a whole lot of hoops, but it is frustrating watching ourselves jump through all the hoops. So I just want to get on and get things done, and it's just frustrating watching ourselves jump through the hoops we have to jump through. So I agree with everything that Councillor Zabellin has said. So yes, get on and get things done. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. I would ask everybody to vote now to receive that memorandum. That's carried unanimously. Thank you. Moving to our next item and invite Anne-Marie and Greg back again, this time joined by Kelly, Chief Executive of Sport Manawatu. We're presenting the Sport Manawatu Charitable Trust 6-month progress update, 1 July to 31 December 2024. Thank you all. Over to whoever's leading off. Anne-Marie.
Kia ora koutou. Here today to, with Sport Manawatu, to present, for us to present the 6-month report. So I'm Anne-Marie Murray, Policy Analyst Strategic Planning Group, and I will let my friends at the table introduce themselves.
Kia ora, ko Kelly Shanks toka ingoa.
Kia ora, Carl Johnston, Tuka Ungawa.
Kia ora koutou, ko Kylie Tapsell, Kylie Turuwhenua Tapsell tōku ingoa.
So again, making this relatively quick, Sport Manawatu are required to present 6-monthly and 12-monthly reports. So we will take the report as read, but of course happy to take any questions. I think Kelly has just indicated that she has a few things that she would like to say.
Kia ora, so I thought I'd just front this before I get questions on it. And I've written it down. so I can try and stick to it. I feel we could have a robust conversation today following the basketball conversation. In lieu of making any uninformed comments or having my own opinions on that, I would like to say that I appreciate and support Council's resolution and look forward to working with Wade and the team, Basketball Manawatu and Basketball NZ, to better understand and support this space to ensure that Tamariki and Rangatahi have the opportunity to play sport. What I will also say is volleyball. So we have the Volleyball Nationals here this week, in case anybody is walking around with their eyes closed. It is fantastic. It's the largest secondary school event in Aotearoa, so it is fantastic to have it here. We are still in Pami, Manawatu, we're still in there, so that is great. Hopefully we might be in the finals, that'll be really exciting. And we also have Kiorahi Nationals in 2 weeks as well. So it is an exciting and vibrant place to be. I'd also just like to acknowledge CEDA last night in regards to the Wait What campaign. It was a fantastic night, and looking forward to collaborating with them going forward and showing and demonstrating what a fantastic place it is to live here. Kia ora.
So we will open for any questions on the Sport Manawatu 6-month report, but we will not be taking questions on basketball specifically at this stage. There have been some statements made in the chamber that just need to be carefully verified before we make public comment on that. So if we could direct your questions to the matters in front of us with the report, please. Councillor Barrett.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Appreciate you ruling out my favourite sport.
Pick another one.
Just had a question around 6.2 in the report where it's talking about kind of looking ahead and Sport New Zealand wanting to have, I guess, a greater role in terms of the conversations here. What does that look like in a good outcomes kind of scenario from Sport Manawatu's point of view?
Great question. Yeah, so that is looking at how Sport New Zealand, ourselves and Palmerston North City Council have obviously aspirations that are collaborative and crossover, and so how we can work in synergy together. So it's a three-way plan, looking at how they can support with the aspirations of Palmerston North City Council and our work in that space. So leaning in, I guess, into their expertise and for them to be a support function.
Thanks. So having heard the review of the last item in terms of some elected members' concerns around inbound investment, timeliness of inbound investment, again, from a glass half full kind of point of view, what might this look like in future in terms of having a stronger link there?
I can answer that. We have a very strong link with Sport New Zealand. In fact, Sport New Zealand are I suppose, the key advocate for regional sports facility planning and contribute funding towards the development of those plans across the country. So yeah, we have strong support from the Spaces and Places team in Sport New Zealand, not only the Spaces and Places team, but across the organisation. We have regular visits by Colin Stone, who's the regional partnership manager. I think he's been in the chamber a couple of times. So yeah, we're working together to get that, I suppose, shared understanding of organisations that are all kind of aspiring to very similar things, which at the most basic levels for people to be more active. So yeah, I suppose we're developing those relationships stronger, recognising that Sport Manawatu, their biggest investment partner is Sport New Zealand, and we are the biggest council investor into Sport Manawatu's operations. So yeah, makes sense.
Thanks for that insight. Turning now to the second of three areas, Madam Chair, just around the bike ready. So can I understand which 5 schools are currently getting that service provided?
Kia ora, Councillor. I think in our report here, if you've seen this one, for the 6-month space, we had, which was through to December, the end of last year, West End, Parkland, Cornerstone, Riverdale and Winchester. And then with the team working through Term 1 and Term 2, we've got Te Kura Waido, Milson, Awapuni and Clovelly as well.
And is that all the schools in the community that would like to have access to this, or is that a subset?
It is a subset and based on availability of people resource to be able to stretch across the schools.
Thank you. And in terms of what councils put into draft annual budget for the year ahead, would we expect that number to be the same, go down, go up?
Sorry, Councillor, do you mean for bike-ready investment?
Yep.
My understanding at the same level as it is this financial year.
Thank you. And is that consistent with where Sport Mountain 2 sees things going?
It is. I guess there's the opportunity to look at what we discussed at the last one in regards to is it level 2 in bike ready, and or is it actually about working with, because we can get much higher numbers, working with children to ensure that they're confident and safe biking. That is fundamentally different and much higher numbers than it is for passing level 2 bike ready, which is very focused and specific, if that helps add context.
Thanks. Could I just get a sense of the process that schools might go into if they're looking to access this next year, knowing that there's already some schools that kind of have a footprint and a relationship with you? Is it an open process? How can schools get in the door? What can we do there?
There's probably a couple of ways that we look at the schools. One of those is through our relationships we currently have. The other is through our Healthy Active Learning schools, which is a specific initiative into primary schools, those with high social equity index ratings. So thinking more around that equity space. So our team internally doing a lot of work to identify where some of our high needs schools might need this and want this support, balancing that along with some of the schools that we have on our roster as well.
Thanks. I guess in the last year, were some schools actually turned away?
That's a really good question. Right now, as we currently stand, we are full through to the end of the year. There's no open spaces unless a school does pull out. So when the call does go out, it's very quick to come back in from our schools. And then it's up to our team to look at what else over and above can be supported in different ways with a school as well. So that whether that be through teacher training, additional stuff outside of school hours, there's some different ways that can look.
Thanks. I guess could we get some visibility, perhaps of the most recent round, but in upcoming round 2 of kind of how much you're having to turn around or turn away because the funding isn't there? Because I think, without straying too far into comment, it would be helpful for us to understand how big the demand is.
Absolutely, we'll do that.
Great, thank you. Finally, noting that this is a 2024 reporting period, there's a couple smiling faces at the back of that document that were appointed in 2025 to their ministerial roles, and I just wondered if you had in 2024 some preview or insight into the changes of ministerial portfolios.
No. So that obviously is a recent change there, and a little bit of a surprise, I guess, in some ways. But obviously we are always happy to work with whoever is appointed into those positions. Obviously we were lucky in the sense that Mark Mitchell came along to the Rural Games, so that was great to show that he was really interested in our region and in sport. So that is, and we look forward to, I guess, so Sport New Zealand have been working with the new minister to understand and bring him along on the journey, because obviously, as you'll appreciate, they prepared the minister's briefing, that goes. He has a big portfolio, he needs to get his head around that space, so we haven't got direction on exactly where his direction lies just yet. But, yeah.
Great, thank you. Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Hancock.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Yeah, probably just a question there, just to perhaps just extrapolate a little bit of information out around bike ready. Paragraph 3.1 actually talks about the potential or the loss of NZTA funding, and of course on page 58 there's some statistics there in terms of schools and the numbers of students, etc., etc. Paragraph 3.1 actually talks about potential sustainability risks for the program. So can we just have some more understanding of what that might mean for us? So how would that affect the stats, for example, that are listed on page 58? What did it look like last year? What's it likely to look next year?
Yes, Councillor, it has been, I suppose, a challenging time with that uncertainty hanging over all of us around funding that perhaps was anticipated to support Bike Ready and amongst a whole lot of things. It is difficult for Sport Manawatu to manage that level of uncertainty. It does impact, I suppose, on their ability to resource that area adequately with the uncertainty. I'm hoping that through the, I didn't mention at the start, the workshop that we're about to have this afternoon about the next 3 years, whether we can get some greater certainty, I suppose, as much as we can have in I suppose, an annual cycle of re-looking at budgets, and where we have previously relied on some external funding to support that program. So I don't have the answers right now, but I'm hoping that maybe we can, and I know the Sport Manawatu team have been looking about the overall cost to deliver that program. Some of the operational grant that that council provides to Sport Manawatu has a broader active transport lens, I suppose, in terms of supporting the outcome for people to walk and cycle on our network. So yeah, it is something that we'll be carefully, I think, looking at in more detail as we're entering into those conversations about the next 3 years.
I guess to answer your question, that if the funding's not there, we can't deliver on it. That's what it comes down to, really, in regards to, yeah.
Okay, so in the meantime, what you're actually doing is perhaps dipping into other parts of the budget to actually sustain it for the meantime, but the future of the program is uncertain. Would that be a fair assessment?
Yep, absolutely.
Thank you. And look, just turning to page 54, there's a brief paragraph there on Kick for the Seagulls program, and Sport Manawatu's had a role in that. Can you just tell us, is there anything future planned for that, and perhaps just explain to councillors what that program is and what the future might look like? Thank you.
Sure. So Kick for the Seagulls is predominantly led and run by YMCA and UCOM, and working with alternative education and using play. Our part, I guess, component is working with play, rec and sport in order to support the rangatahi into positive leadership spaces. And is there a future? That is something that we need to have a chat with, because it's not our programme, so I wouldn't want to comment on that. There's certainly been positive recognition, and obviously with the new Minister of Sport, with a strong justice background, is supportive of these types of programmes.
Yeah, so for other councillors, this is about a program for at-risk youth?
Absolutely.
Yep. And the program that was run through to December last year, how many people actually were on that, and how did it play out? I would
have to check. I think it was about 20. Yeah, we can check that and get back to you with accurate. If not.
Sorry, we're taking comments from the gallery. We can't hear them. Yep. So do you want to invite that staff member down? Okay, thank you.
Yep. So the 12 were 12 at-risk youth, and these are highly at-risk youth, not just yet. So we're worked with in regards. So it was very successful.
Great, thank you. Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Hancock. Finally, Councillor Harpeter.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Thank you. Just one question for me on page 47 around the economic impact of the events. So 16 events supported by the Event Fund, which estimated 12 million from nearly 300,000 of investment. Just wanting to know the most successful event and probably the least successful event, if you can just share that with us.
Successful, are you saying in the sense of the economic impact, or because success can be different things to different people?
In dollar terms, you've already shared us the dollar terms, so we've already seen that. So just just give us your views.
I think What I would say is I think they're all very successful in their own ways. And what I would say is that we have a strong reputation in Palmerston North as being the home of secondary school sports, which is something that we would want to retain. But I also would say there's a beautiful balance between the community as well as the economic impact events that bring that variety and vibrancy to the community. It's an amazing fund.
So you haven't said which one it was?
And I don't think she's going to, Councillor, because we're not
Not
picking
allowed to have
favourite
favourites.
children. I think she feels that would be inappropriate in a public forum, but maybe you could have a private conversation later. Any further questions, Councillor? No. Councillor Hancock, your light is still on. You're out. Good. Thank you. That is the end of questions. Thank you for presenting your report and taking the questions, providing those answers. We look forward to continuing the discussion in the workshop later this afternoon. Thank you very much. So I'll move that the committee receive the Sport Manawatu Charitable Trust 6-month progress report presented to Culture and Sport today, 26th of March. Seek a seconder, Councillor Meehan. Thank you. Open that for any comments. Deputy Mayor, Councillor Marshall-Lobb.
Kia ora, Madam Chair. I'm really grateful for the presentation from Kelly, Carl, Kylie and Anne-Marie. Thank you all. I just wanted to look at outcome 3 with regards to the bike ready delivery, and I suppose offer some further insight, having some experience of that in the early days when with my own school, not the current one, but a previous school. Here in Palmerston North, we have approximately 17,000 primary and secondary school students. We have 43 primary and secondary schools within Palmerston North. And the percentage of students or schools that have participated is representative of 11.63% who are on this program. So there is a potential of 88.4% not covered. And I'm quite sure that we realise the benefit of those students, of young people learning that skill, and we know that cycling improves health, physical health. We know it boosts confidence and independence, and managing self is one of the key competencies within the education system, and I think that hits that really well. There's enhanced road safety awareness, and I just see that as quite pivotal. So I do acknowledge Sport Manawatu for the wonderful work and the wonderful program, not only in bike ready delivery of that program, but across the board. But that's something, I suppose, that bike ready, I'd hate to see us lose the opportunity to offer it to more schools, more students, more families, to give us peace of mind and probably confidence that we could do it. But I want to say thank you very much. But I actually had to look up those figures and say, how many kids do we have in Palmerston North, and how many schools, and what percentage does that represent? So thank you again, team, very much. Kia ora.
Thank you. The Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Can I just acknowledge Sport Manawatu, like the Deputy Mayor, for the great work that's been going on. Thanks to Kelly and the team. Just a couple of things, and I think touching on Councillor Hancock's comments around Kick for the Seagulls, that was, thank you for supporting that. I mean, UCOL were very much behind that along with the Y, but that really changed the lives of a dozen people or 11 people, and actually their families. I went to the graduation with Sir Graham Lowe. It's his program, which is predominantly run, it's an alternative education, but it's predominantly run in actually corrections facilities. But we did this in conjunction with all the partners led by UCOL. It was amazing, and I think I'd hate to see that lost, and I do hope that it's sort of in everybody's minds that we continue that, because alternative education does keep people out of courts and probably worse activities. Just on some of the outcomes, I think here it's good to see we are the second most physically active region, it says here on page 54 of our report here, which I think is amazing to get a stat like that, and it really is one of the key goals or key outcomes with the city or Palmerston North being one of the most active communities in New Zealand. But also just the sports events which you've supported, and it's not just the financial side or the economic benefit side, but it's actually the social outcomes, the well-being outcomes which it does for our community. You know, we've got 4,000 volleyball players and supporters in town here this week, and you can feel they're in town, and that's great. And they're just one of a number of different competitions and NSOs, national sporting organisations, that you're supporting. And I look at the multi-year agreements you've got, and really for the money we're spending there of under 300,000 and getting nearly $12.5 million worth, let alone all the social and other wellbeing outcomes, that is tremendous bang for dollar. And to get, and quite varied, you know, we've had basketball in here earlier today, but actually the support of basketball is large there, but also all the other sports and events like the Muslim IDC games and also the ETHCIC. We're reaching out to some of our ethnic communities as well. Just on the last page, I think it's quite important too that the sector updates or trends, because sport's a little bit different now to what it was perhaps 10 years ago or even 5 years ago. You know, on both an economic, an environmental, a social, a political level, and the status of sort of funding, and that includes our sort of level of funding, but also people's own disposable income, the nature of changing leisure patterns, but also changing work. You know, people work so many more different hours now, so it makes it hard sometimes to get out and do things. But I had to have a little bit of a giggle around the changing leisure patterns where it said running clubs have become really popular because you could meet romantic partners. So, yeah, don't all jump out and join the park run. But seriously, it is great to see that. And I note there you've really focused in on workforce and volunteers. And tonight I'm on an online AGM for a national sporting organisation, and tomorrow I go to my club AGM, and I'll look around the room and just see who is actually doing the work. It's the volunteers. So please don't forget the volunteers. I think they need to be acknowledged and recognised, even in just a very, very small way. So thank you for the work you do.
Oh, I was about to close off there, Fire Deb, you just snuck in.
Sorry, Madam Chair. I just wanted to say that having attended the opening for the New Zealand Secondary Schools volleyball tournament on Sunday night, one of the things that the chair of New Zealand Volleyball said that really struck me, and I thought, this is amazing, was that from Monday morning until this Friday, there will be 1,000 games played at Arena. It's also televised. I mean, we see it with the basketball, we'll see it with Kia Orahi. I just think well done to our city, to our wonderful Sport Manawatu staff and the councillors here who support you, and definitely, as the Mayor said, the volunteers and the players and coaches and managers. I think it's a real time to celebrate that. Kia ora.
Kia ora, tautoko that. Thank you, that's the end of the comments. Just thank you, Sport Manawatu, to your staff, board and the volunteers that you represent in the chamber. I think it's incredibly valuable to have this sector-wide view that you bring to us, and helps us not to get just dragged into the needs of individual codes for their facilities or support, but providing that strategic oversight is incredibly valuable. So thank you for your work. Colleagues, I'll ask you to vote. Carried unanimously. Thank you. We're moving And thank you so much, our sector leads who've enjoyed the last hour of conversation, I'm sure. We're moving to our annual sector lead reports. First up, we have Community Arts Palmerston North Incorporated, which probably know more familiarly to us as Square Edge Community Arts. Gillian Tasker, our Community Development Advisor for the Arts, leading this report, and accompanied by Rose Evans, Artistic Director at Square Edge. Councillor Zabellen, you would like to speak.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I declare a conflict of interest because I sit on this board, so I'll put myself in the gallery.
Thank you very much. Over to you, Gillian and Rose, for any comments you want to make before we go to questions. Thank you.
Kia ora koutou, Gillian Tasker, Community Development Advisor. Yes, just to say we are happy to take this report as read and remain to answer questions, and I'll just hand over to Rose to introduce herself.
Kia ora koutou, my name's Rose. I'm the Artistic Director at Square Edge. I began in October 2024. We're just down the road from you, and my role sort of covers the creative direction of the building, which is exhibitions, workshops, programs, events and funding. Unfortunately, my colleague Jane couldn't be here today. She's sick, but she is our finance and building manager. Thanks.
Thank you both. I wanted to ask to start, and there may be other questions, but in the assessment of activities, this might be for you, Gillian, but there are a couple of developing areas there. First in Seeker working collaboratively with others during the period, and then with work providing capacity building and support for other community organisations. I wondered if you'd be able to tell us a bit about how those activities are developing and where you're hoping to get to.
To a great extent, the restriction on what Square Edge was able to do in the last year was because their team of 3 was down to a team of 2. So that lasted for about 7 months or so. We feel that now that they have a full team, we would expect that they would be able to meet those measures quite easily. They certainly, the team of 2 that were there, Jane and Charlotte, did a fantastic job in maintaining their present level of ability, but we think that they can grow in both of those areas.
Good. Do you have any comment there, Rose, about your aspiration for Square Edge in that space of community leadership?
Yeah, we are looking at working with all sorts of organisations and people. We have building relationships with Te Wānanga or Aotearoa and Toiho ki Apiti and the Massey Māori Visual Arts. I'm looking to make more relationships with the schools and bring in more, especially high school students and young people as well.
That's great. Thank you. Councillor Barrett.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Thanks for the report. I was just interested in some of the performance stats on page 83 and 84, I think, of our agenda. Just in particular, the second line there around the total number of walk-ins, there does seem to be a bit of a trend there. Is that trend kind of noticeable in terms of your time in that space, and is there a view that Square Edge has about kind of what numbers should be, and any response to that trend?
I think that it can be put down to a number of factors, and potentially in that time, the capacity of the team is that there was less workshops, less programs running, and hopefully now with a full team we can get those numbers back up again.
Thanks. I guess it's kind of sometimes a quantity quality thing too, in terms of not necessarily the quality of people coming in, but the quality of work, you know, and the amount of work that it takes to mount a workshop or exhibit and that kind of thing. So how is that balance going for you guys?
Yeah, we are busy all the time. So in running workshops, it's not just that we can put on a workshop, we are having to support the artists to learn how to teach a workshop and think through all the ways that this might be a feasible option for them. Obviously, I'm sure you've heard it over and over again, is that money is tight for people, and so a lot of our creatives are in full-time work, so getting people to come in and run workshops is also quite challenging. Where we do get funding, we pay for tutors and we try and subsidise the workshops just to get more people in using the space. Yeah.
Great. Thank you for that, Madam Chair.
Thank you both. There are no further questions, so you got off quite lightly there, Rose, but thank you for coming in and speaking to the memorandum with Gillian. Really appreciate the work you do there. So the recommendation that we receive the memorandum titled Annual Sector Lead Report, Community Arts Palmerston Incorporated, Square Edge Community Arts, presented to Culture and Sport Committee 26 March 2025. I'll move that, seconded by Councillor Meehan. Open for any comments. I want to say the reading through the stats is really interesting. Councillor Barrett, noting that total number of walk-ins, it's still 75,000 people. That's quite a big number, and I'm always taken by that when we receive applications for funding through our Creative Community Scheme, that when artists are applying to use Square Edge for their work, one of the real value adds of having it at Square Edge is the normal level of foot traffic that's there. So that is incredibly valuable. I think we're all aware of the changing situation with the cafe space in Square Edge, and I'm sure that does make a difference to the amount of casual walk-ins as well. It's always been a useful attractor for the building, and maybe attracts people who who go in there first for coffee and might accidentally get some art and find information about workshops on the side. So looking forward to see how the development of space was for you. But, yeah, an impressive number of exhibitions, of artists profiled, of artists engaging with Square Edge through your work. Thank you for everything that you do in that space, and thank you to the wider team as well. No further comments, so I'll ask you to vote. Supported unanimously, thank you. Our final sector lead report for this morning is Creative Sound Society Incorporated, known to us more familiarly as the Stomach. Gillian will come back again as the Community Development Advisor working in our arts sector, joined by Abby Symes, Manager of the Stomach, and he is also being supported. Jordan, thank you, Jordan. Over to you for any comments.
Yes, kia ora anō, Gillian Tasker, Community Development Advisor. And again, we will take the report as read, and we're happy to answer questions. I'll just let Abby and Jordan introduce themselves.
Kia ora. Kia ora, I'm Abby Symes, and yeah, I'm the manager of the Stomach.
Kia ora, I'm Jordan Ngātoko-Kupe, and I'm the convener at the Stomach.
And with that, you would open for questions. Excellent. I was delighted to see that all of your priorities are listed as met in the report. So, Abby, I wondered if you would be able to just give us a little oversight of why you feel the Stomach is so successful at the moment.
At the moment, I think it's because of our history. We've been successful pretty much always. So, you know, the good things just keep rolling. People are wanting connection, and music is a sensational way to do that. We've been consistent even in periods of toughness or in economic with living and things. You know, our prices remain reasonably affordable for people. There's always like a gig on at some time in the month that people can go to. So, yeah, I just think people know it's a good thing, and keep eating it up.
Well, we're not going to disagree with that, are we? I think the thing that doesn't come across to me in your priorities, and the thing I've been really impressed by with the Stomach, is the amount of young people young adults usually, but younger people generally, who come into like organisational governance rolls through that. Is that hard to get people to participate in your board or management committee structure?
To get young people, it's not. You just really hype it up as an awesome time, and then they get there and realise it's pretty awesome, but it's definitely not as awesome as I thought. Nah, but they just like, it's community, and so we just really encourage people to get involved, and there's no pressure. It's definitely a learning opportunity. So we just try and be really supportive of young people. We've got 2 reps for young people at the minute, and yeah, it's easy. I mean, I promote it really hard because it's how I learned governance. I was on the management committee as a young buck, and just like, yeah. So I think just being open and saying how beneficial it can be, and that it's no pressure. Like, just come and sit and watch and learn, and yeah. So, but yeah, it would be good to probably keep track of that and stats, because we do kill it with our young people on committee.
Kia ora. Councillor Hancock has a question.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Thanks, guys. Hey, just a really quick question. It's just around an outlier which was in the statistics, which are percentage of members who report feeling better connected to the community, and that appears to have dropped down to 54%. So I was just wondering if you got some understanding of why that is so.
Yeah, I would say it would be because. One moment, please, caller. Yeah, that's what I thought too. We lost our community outreach coordinator. We had a 3-year funding term with Ministry of Culture and Heritage, and so we don't have a full-time employee equivalent like pushing things in. I mean, we've got 3 years of momentum behind that, and then it just comes to almost a grinding halt because we're at capacity staffing wise. So what do we do? Like, it's a lot harder to advertise shows, and if bands aren't pushing their own shows, we kind of pick up the slack. And so I think we do see like less engagement there, and also like newsletters. We were doing monthly newsletters, and it's like we're lucky to even chuck one out. So it's just like little things like that. Having lost our community outreach connector, it's just it has like taken a toll.
Thanks, Abby. As always, good answer. Thank you.
Thanks.
Councillor Barrett.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Thanks, Abby, and welcome, Jordan. More questions about the stats, about the numbers. Like most of those categories, you guys are just rocking it, to use a musical term, with like really high support in terms of people appreciating what's happening, enjoying it, all that kind of stuff. But the one I was curious about then is the what's called the Net Promoter Score, which seems to be quite low in terms of the likelihood of people that are clients already kind of recommending it to others. And I was just trying to wonder, it seems to me like there's a disconnect there. Does it feel that way to you, or what might be going on there around the recommending to others?
I think it's for us to get that score. I mean, we're pushing out a survey and things. So although it's like a good representation of who we're asking, I don't think we're getting like the big picture in regards to like that stat. But I think we can always push harder. And I think a lot of people, especially our users, just assume other people know that we're here. But the amount of people you talk to, even just like I talk to saying I'm the manager of the stomach, people are like, what's the stomach? And so I think there's been quite a lot of our history is just kind of like trying to keep it on the down low, and like people who know. But I've been really trying to push that, like, people who don't know need to know. And so I don't know if that answers your question, but I think that's kind of where we're at.
Yeah, that's helpful insight on it. I guess flipping it a little bit the other way, like new people that come in the door, is it usually like word of mouth or word of social media? Like, is it personal contact that gets them there? Or?
Yeah. So it has been a lot. And I mean, the 3 years we had our community outreach coordinator, word of mouth was huge, like especially for the people in the disability community. Like, it spread like wildfire that we were a space that was affordable and inclusive and a place where people could come. But I think that's definitely a great point to start pushing more, is like spread the good word.
Cool. Thank you both.
Sweet.
Madam Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Dennison.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you both. Just in regards to accessible for all, can I understand your hireage rates for users for rehearsal space or to perform? How the arrangements work for that?
Yeah, so we've got like a bit of a scale for rehearsal rooms. So anyone like under 16 or on any sort of benefit is $5 an hour for the room. Then student rate is $7.50 for a rehearsal room, and then standard rate is $12.50 an hour for a rehearsal room. Recording studio is $25 an hour for students, and then waged is $45 an hour, and then we've got an out of town rate for which is $75 an hour to try and deter out of towners to come and use our space. If they want to splash out, kids pie, like we'll have them, and it's meant to be able to like have that national cred, but yeah, we do try and deter them just so we can keep it within reach for our local musos. And then show-wise, for our venue hire, we just take 25% of the door. We do a risk share model to make sure, especially young bands can tour, because touring can smash your pocket. Like, it's really expensive if you go to the main venues and things. They set a hireage fee, usually like $3.50, and that's maybe no one will come, you know. So yeah, that's what we do. Yeah,
that's great. Thank you.
Yeah.
And what sort of percentage of your turnover, like with the grants that you've got with these other ones noted in NZ Music Commission, Department of Internal Affairs and the like, when that's all pulled together, what is the user pay contribution to your overall budget?
I don't actually know. Sorry, I should, but I don't. I can get that to you though. Yeah, we've got it. I just don't know it. I'm sorry.
No, that's good. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. I think that would be useful to know, Abby, if you want to bring that one back.
Yeah, I'll chuck it to everyone.
I'll just send it to Gillian. She'll sort us
Oh,
out.
I'll chuck it to Gillian.
Yeah.
I was going to say we'll eat it up.
Yeah, do. Eat it up, team.
You are all trying way too hard. Something that comes across really strongly in your reporting is how you aspire to be and are received by the community as a safe, accessible, inclusive space. Made me wonder if you have Safe Spaces accreditation?
No, I looked into it one time when I first started actually as community outreach coordinator, and it like cost a lot for the national one, and we just don't really have the funding for that. We just like to people to know we are. But yeah, it's definitely something to look into again, because yeah, we live and breathe it.
Yeah, I think there has been a local programme to do that, so I think we can connect you with that.
Lovely.
Hey, there are no further questions. Thank you, Abby and Jordan, for coming in and waiting through that hour and a half to get your moment in the spotlight. Thank you, Gillian, for your work with our community groups. I will move that the committee receive the memorandum titled Annual Sector Lead Report, Creative Sound Society Incorporated, The Stomach, presented to Culture and Sport on 26th March 2025, seconded by Councillor Meehan. Open that for any comments from the very enthusiastic elected members. I will kick that off. That Net Promoter Score is a really difficult measure and will be a product of how many surveys you're able to get out and get people to respond to. So I'd be interested to see how that tracks, but I'm not too worried about it. I think what comes across strongly in the Stomach's reporting is always their genuine connection to and representation of community. And they have their own community that's built up over many, many years. There are people who've been associated with the Stomach, as teenagers who are now adults and have teenagers of their own who are back with the Stomach. They're a really important part of our community that does go a little bit under the radar, as Abby said. And maybe that's part of the attraction. I don't know. I don't want to mess with something that's working too much. But I was delighted, and I think I shared this with Abby and Jordan before their last AGM. I was driving home. I had Radio New Zealand on because that is the age I am. And Jessie Mulligan was interviewing somebody, and they were talking about the Stomach. They were talking about how that's a really important part of Palmerston North, that's part of our cultural heritage as a community, that there have been really great artists and bands who've worked through that space, have used our facility, and we're well known in that kind of alternative indie music space. So just because it's not maybe on our radar doesn't mean it's not really, really important. We're not their target audience, maybe. Although I continue to be surprised by the kind of random covers bands of Palmerston North who use the stomach for rehearsal space. So maybe we are on their radar and we'll all start a band. But thank you for the work that you do and the difference that you make in our community. It's really appreciated. Colleagues, I'll ask you to vote on that recommendation. Carried unanimously. Thank you very much. The final item on our agenda is the work schedule. Lots of things today. I will just draw your attention, colleagues, to items 6 and 7, which is 6-month performance reports for the Globe and Te Manawa, and draft statement of intent also will go to council next week. The paperwork wasn't ready in time for this meeting, so that will go straight to council. Anything you'd like to add, Chris?
Nothing further.
Your contribution is always appreciated. Thank you. I will move that we receive the work schedule, seconded by Councillor Meehan. Any questions on that? Being none, we will vote. Carried unanimously. Thank you all for your contributions today. Thank you to all the people in the gallery. Finally, I'd like to close us with karakia. Oh, I would like to press your button.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you to those who are here today, elected members, council staff, members of the public, and our organisations, ka mihi kia koutou. Kua mutua mātou mahi mō tēnei wā, our work is finished for this particular hui. Manakitia I o mātou whānau, look after our families. We want that to happen. We want our friends o mātou hoa to be watched over, tō mātou hāpuri and our community. Nō reira, kia pai tēnei rā. Have a good day, everyone. Tēnā koutou, kia ora tātou katoa.
Kia ora whaia Deb, nō reira na mihi nui kia koutou, e nā mana, e nā reo. Tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa. That is us done. Lunch, and then back for the Sport Manawatu workshop.